What does it mean when a man becomes more symbol than self? When his name stirs more fear and fury than his deeds ever could? Today, we look beyond the obvious comparison to the perspective of power itself, where it wants to direct your fear. In Orwell's 1984, Emmanuel Goldstein fills that role, a ghostly adversary, necessary to the party's power, whether he exists or not. In America, James Comey has been cast into a similar part. The parallels offer us a lesson on tyranny's need for fabricated enemies. In George Orwell's 1984, Emmanuel Goldstein is not a man so much as a mechanism. His figure hovers over the story as the archetype of the necessary enemy, a scapegoat conjured to embody dissent, to concentrate fear and hatred, and to stabilize loyalty to the party. Goldstein may be real, or he may be entirely fabricated. Orwell leaves that ambiguous. What matters is not his existence, but his function. His image fuels the 2 minutes hate, a ritual where citizens release their anxieties, suspicions, and resentments in a collective storm of denunciation. It does not matter whether his writings persuade anyone, or whether he secretly organizes a resistance. The party needs him as a figure, as an anchor for projection, as a justification for control. The moment we ask whether James Comey has become America's Goldstein, we are not really asking about the man himself. We are asking whether American politics has slipped into the same paranoid cycle, one in which dissent is defined by enemies invented to justify repression. Comey's biography, prior to the Trump years, would have hardly seemed fodder for myth. A prosecutor, a government lawyer, eventually the FBI director, his life was built in the language of bureaucracy, legality, and cautious interpretation. But conflict with the Trump administration transformed him into something else entirely, a contested symbol. To critics, he became the face of a shadowy deep state, an institutional conspiracy bent on undermining a populist president. And to supporters, he became a martyr for the principle that law must restrain power, even when power wears a presidential seal. In this transformation, we can see the Goldstein mechanism at work. Comey ceased to be judged as an individual. He became a screen onto which fears and loyalties could be projected. His personal history, his choices, even his intentions, they all mattered less than the symbolic role assigned to him. Like Goldstein, he was not needed for what he did, but for what his image could carry. Orwell understood that hatred was not incidental to authoritarian rule. It was central. Goldstein's face appeared not only in whispered rumors of conspiracy, but in ritual displays of outrage designed to bind the population emotionally to the party. In similar fashion, modern American politics thrives on spectacle. Every Fox News chyron flashing treason or deep state saboteur against Comey's name is not about evidence. It is about ritual. The denunciation itself becomes an act of loyalty. To hate Comey is to belong, just as to scream at Goldstein's image was to reaffirm devotion to Big Brother. Memes, speeches, chants at rallies. These are not the organs of reasoned argument. They are the rhythms of the 2 minutes hate, repeated across digital platforms, reinforcing the same essential truth. The enemy must exist, because without him the movement cannot cohere. Projection deepens the resemblance. In 1984, Goldstein is blamed for all the very things the party itself does: sabotage, lies, corruption, betrayal. He is the mirror in which power hides its own reflection. So too in America, accusations against Comey almost perfectly invert the reality of events. He is accused of weaponizing justice by those who openly dismantle oversight, purge inspectors, and pressure prosecutors to serve partisan ends. He is called a traitor by those who hollow out the law. The mechanism is Orwellian not because it invents lies, but because it weaponizes inversion. Loyalty is redefined as betrayal, and betrayal of law is rebranded as loyalty to the state. By casting Comey as the archetype of corruption, the administration shields itself from the charge of the very corruption it commits. The projection works precisely because it is seamless. It convinces the loyal that any accusation against power must be a plot by Goldstein. Names themselves become battlegrounds. In Orwell's novel, Goldstein's power lies not in his deeds. Whether he leads a resistance is irrelevant, but in the fact that his name has been made into a symbol. It gathers emotion, directs suspicion, organizes thought. In America, Comey's army functions in a similar way. The phrase began as an accusation, a shorthand for conspiracy, but in circulation it became something more. Dissidents adopted it ironically, then earnestly, as a mark of defiance. The regime curses it, the people whisper it, and the man at its center has little control over how it is used. This is what Orwell foresaw. Once a name becomes contested ground, it ceases to belong to the individual. It becomes a floating signifier, available for both condemnation and inspiration. Comey the man fades. Comey the name persists. Yet here the analogy falters and the difference matters. Back in 1984, Goldstein is silent, powerless, maybe even fictional. His existence doesn't really matter because his role is already set in stone. Now Comey, on the other hand, he still acts. He writes, he teaches, he speaks. He's not erased from the world of agency, but the trouble isn't that he can't speak, it's that his speech is actually prescripted by others before anyone even hears it. Every essay he pens, every single word he utters, it's instantly reframed as evidence of guilt or heck, proof of conspiracy. The paradox of symbolic enmity is this: speech is never truly free. It's always pre-interpreted. In this sense, Comey may not be Goldstein, but he risks the same fate. To be trapped in a symbolic cage where meaning is always decided in advance by those who need him to remain the enemy. The deeper danger lies not in what this means for Comey, but in what it means for the public. Orwell's warning was never only about the individual who was cast as the enemy. It was about the population that learns to channel its anger, its fear, and its loyalty through the ritual of hatred. When individuals become symbols, truth ceases to matter. Narrative takes its place. The invented enemy becomes more important than any real political outcome. In Oceania, the party sustained itself through perpetual war and perpetual scapegoating. In America, the same mechanism risks hollowing out democratic judgment, replacing it with endless cycles of denunciation and defense. To scream at Comey's name is to participate in a ritual that has nothing to do with him and everything to do with control. So, is James Comey Emmanuel Goldstein? Not literally, he still breathes, still chooses, still argues, but in symbolic terms the resemblance is hard to ignore. He has become a ghostly figure, necessary for the maintenance of power, the embodiment of betrayal, the enemy that justifies loyalty, the mirror in which corruption hides its own face. To see this is not to defend him as an individual, but to recognize the pattern. For Orwell's prophecy was never about the inevitability of tyranny, but about its method. Tyranny does not sustain itself on victory. It sustains itself on the invention of enemies who can never be defeated. The real danger is not that Comey is Goldstein, but that we, like Oceania's citizens, may not notice when we have begun to act as if he is. In shouting at the screen, we risk fastening the chains ourselves.